All right, I'm gonna do a code review of the FPS microgame that comes with Unity in the Learn section. It looks like this. You have a weapon, it has a cooldown, there are enemies, you can shoot stuff. Um, that's pretty much it. We're not gonna focus on the game itself or what Unity wants us to do with the game. There's a whole tutorial section with it. We're just gonna look at the code as is and see if we can learn a thing or two. So what I usually do is I just go through the code top top to bottom, not really look at the structure, just look at the code itself. Um, and then later, well, it will become obvious whether we can piece together the structure or whether we should look at the scene hierarchy to see how things are hooked up or what means what. For now, we just go with the names of the classes. Okay, so got a bunch of managers. Let's have a look. It's a mono behavior, so it's a script on something. It's probably only one because it's a manager. Got a list of actors and has a reference to a player. Let's see who does anything with the actors. Okay, so actors add themselves to the list on start and remove themselves on destroy. That's pretty straightforward. They find the actor manager by using find objects of type. That is not a good idea. This is a this is not a cheap function to call. So if you have a lot of these or you spawn them dynamically, this will create a performance problem. Also, this implicitly hooks up one thing to another thing through code. So if you try to test an actor in isolation in like an empty scene and there is no actors manager, well, you would run into this error message. They do have a debug utility that then, well, it says handle error if null find object, but it doesn't handle anything. It just logs the error. All right, already lots of stuff to talk about. Okay, so let's start with this. Don't do that. If you want conditional compilation of an entire method, put a conditional attribute on it. It's compiler services, or I don't know in which namespace it is. Let me look it up. Conditional attribute. Systems diagnostics. There. That compiles away the entire function if we're not in the Unity editor. So that's that's a quick in there's a cleaner way to do that because whenever you see an if def when you ship a real game, you end up with different code for different platforms, and that makes QA really difficult. Where you have a bug that only manifests on one platform, and you want to reproduce it on Windows or in the editor, and you just cannot because of that. So you will you have to search through your entire project for platform defines and check each and every one of them if it's that. So that's a bad way of that's a surefire way to get yourself into a maintenance hell. If you use the conditional attribute, you're also introducing platform dependent branching, but at least you're not doing something like if this, do something else, do something else. You're just like, well, either you do something or you do nothing. And in this case, you just log an error. So it's not like this is going to cause much trouble. Okay, so this is the object that might be null. And if so, then we log an error. We could use assert for that instead of debug log. However, then we would pay for the string concatenation every time because that gets executed before the assert file. So it's not terrible to put that in an if so that we don't pay for all this string concatenation work. Speaking of which, you probably don't want that. You probably want to use string interpolation because that's a bit cheaper. So that would look like that, uh, and so forth, so that it's kind of like string format, but you write the source code right into it. Also, whenever you log an error, make sure um, you pass in the object that where the error occurred. Oh, in this case, it comes last. So that when the error prints on the console, and you click that error, okay, imagine there would be an error here, and you click it. It would then, if you pass in the object, the source object, like so, it would then highlight the source object in the hierarchy, so you can directly go there instead of having to do like this. Chances are the source game object name is gonna be just like game object or game object one or something like that. There's a very high chance it's not gonna have a good name, especially if that object was like instantiated from a prefab. So just pass that in. I personally prefer log arrow format. You pass in the source in the beginning, then you have your string, and then you would do this here, and then pass it in as the 0th argument. I find that quite clean, and especially when the arguments tend to be long, like these two, then you can still kind of fit your string on one line. Okay, check 1, expected to find type 2 in the scene but nowhere found. Something like that. That's already better. Although, well, it should really be called log error and not handle error. Also, if you want to do a null check, don't do equals null, use operator boolean. It's faster and it only works on Unity Engine objects, so you're not by accident passing something which is not Unity to it. And it's clearer too because this is very clearly not a comparison with some other object. It's an operator that tells you this object is valid or not valid. Okay, back to here. Right. So apparently we want to register all our actors to a list in the actors manager. A better way to do that than dynamically finding objects of type actors manager, which can cause all can fail for all kinds of reasons. Let's just put a field in here, um, actors manager, right? Um, get rid of this thing, get rid of this thing. Now we can just link to the actors manager in the inspector, and chances are our actor script is not gonna be like we're gonna dynamically spawn our actors, right? They are not gonna be in the scene. So how are we gonna reference an actors manager uh, who is in the scene? Well, why is it in the scene? It's a mono behavior. It doesn't do anything mono behaviorish. It doesn't have a start, an update, it's on destroy. It just shouldn't be a mono behavior. It should be a scriptable object. All right. Scriptable objects live in the project, just like sounds and stuff like that. So let's see. Actor or managers, game manager, probably was probably on here. Yeah, here the actors manager was on here. So let's get rid of that. Um, Put a create asset menu on this. So and create an actors manager. It's not really a manager because it's not managing anything. It's more like a list, but who cares? Okay, so now it lives in the project and we can reference it. Let's see where the actors come from. Is anyone spawning actors dynamically? We're looking for add component actor. Nope. Okay, that's good. So they must be on some prefab. Let's see. What I usually do in that case where I have to find all the prefabs that use a certain script is I do a full text search. Game actor. Okay. This this is the meta ID that we're gonna look for in all the assets. Okay, these are the prefabs that have it. I mean, this is not this thing itself. So player, enemy turret, and hoverbot. Gonna look at those. Player, player first. Player. There's an actor script on it somewhere, apparently on the root object. Here, okay, actors manager, link the actors manager, and we're done. Game manager. Did I already remove that on this? Oh, I did not. Ah, here. Okay, got rid of that. Don't want to save any changes to the main scene. Discard changes. Okay. Right. We just fixed that. Now, there were two more. There was enemy turret and enemy hoverbot. Enemy turret and enemy hoverbot. Let's see where they have an actor. Here's the actor script. Actors manager, enemy turret. Actor script, actor manager. Done. Everything hooked up. Um, once they spawn, they will register themselves to this actor's manager. We're good. Now, speaking of this actor's manager, so we have a list of actors. For some reason, it's a property, private set in awake. Doesn't make much sense to me. Like this can just be a read-only field. That's literally we can initialize it there, get rid of awake, done. Read-only in this case means that nobody can reassign the entire list. You can still add and remove stuff from the list, so to and from the list. That's exactly what we want. Public is fine. Uh, for, for, to make 100% sure that that Unity is not gonna save this thing, we're gonna put a non-serialized attribute on it. Okay. If actors not contains, add, remove. Okay, here's an if check if we don't have the actors. Okay, let's get rid of this entire thing because this will always be assigned. Eventually, we should have a unit test in our project that runs through all the prefabs and checks all the serialized fields and checks if they are all assigned. So we don't want to do this at runtime. We don't want to. At runtime, it's already too late. We want to know before we make a build that there is a problem in the setup. So this is like this is not going to help the user. This is going to log the error and then it's going to crash here, and the game is not going to function, and the users are not going to send you the log file. So it's not a good strategy. I would. Okay, so we can get rid of this if we always have an actors manager. Also, it was kind of silly that in onDestroy there was an if, but in start there was not. So either you have an if everywhere or nowhere to keep it symmetric. I would probably have a register function which does this code because we're doing object-oriented programming here, right? So the idea is to keep the code and the data um, close to each other. So this is the data, this is the code. Why would that code be in a completely different class? And why does it have to care about if it contains an add? No, all you want to do here is register as an actor. And now that we have that function, we can delete this comment because it's obvious that that is what we do, right? Okay, register, deregister. Wait a second. Oh, fine. We use unregister. We are the actors manager. Okay, register, unregister. Makes more sense now. We still expose the list of actors because this guy here needs to know all the actors for some reason. Okay, it does something. It's a mono behavior. Let's do the same thing we did before. We hard link directly to the actors manager. We don't do this nonsense in start. Why is that virtual? Are people deriving from this? There are no derived classes from detection module, but we have a virtual Really? Hmm. Maybe that's part of the tutorials that they have. Maybe they were supposed to do something later with this, but point is, here all we do in start is finding the actors manager, and we're not going to do that anymore. So let's just get rid of the entire thing, and then if anyone derives from this class, then they can have their own start function where they do only their own things. Um, I'm going to keep the virtual in here just because I'm assuming that later there will be something virtual going to happen with this, but I don't really see it. So either way, detection module, we find out where it is. Um, detection, detection module, find the meta ID. It's on the hoverbot, the enemy turret, and that's it. Okay, cool. It's on the hoverbot and the enemy turret. Detection module. There. Hard link to the actors manager. Done. Okay. What else? So this works now. This works. We could just expose iron numerable here, so that nobody else messes with the with adding and removing from that list. That's actually a good idea. Let's do that. Okay, let's make this private. Let's rename that. And let's expose a property. Let's make that INumerable. Or we could also do iRead-only list if you really want the count. INumerable will do. That way we can change it to a set later if we want actors. Okay, so internally we're gonna use that. Externally we expose the actors property, and the detection module can just for each over that, and it's gonna be fine. Cool, good enough. So already tons better. This still works. Second, enemy controller. Oh, there are more people who want the actors manager. Follow player and enemy player character. Okay, so we'll do the same thing we did for the other ones. Enemy controller. Okay, get rid of that. Follow player. There's always gonna be an actors manager, so can get rid of this and this else. Okay. Wait a second. Was that the code? Yeah. That's so weird. It really looked like they should have checked player and not actors manager, or both, but somehow they assume that there's always gonna be a player. Okay, we're gonna roll with that for now and see if that creates a problem later. It does seem a little bit weird to assume that there's always gonna be a player, because what if the player dies and you destroy that object, or what if the player hasn't spawned yet? Well, maybe that cannot happen here, but who knows? Player character controller. Yeah, again, we have code in awake. Code in awake is almost always a sign of something wrong. Jeez, so much stuff here. What did he have? The reason why I do serialize field private and not just public is this way I can only assign it in the inspector and not also mess with it in code. So it's an extra layer of protection uh, against stupid mistakes. Let's see if we got everything. Looks like okay. Now we have to hook it up. So we already did actor detection module. Okay, we have to do enemy controller, follow player, and player character controller. Enemy controller. Get the GUID. Search for it. Hoverbot. Oh, that's interesting. It's also in the scene. Well, let's see what we will find. Also in the scene. Shouldn't be. Enemy controller right here. Actors manager. Okay. Done. Done. It's only on these two. Oh, it's in here because it has an override. What override does it have? I cannot find any. It's all the same. Okay, this is silly. So someone had an override and then they got rid of the override of the overridden value, but they forgot to revert here. So we still have the changes in the scene. I'm gonna revert and we turn. It's the same. Nothing in here that's different. All right. This time we saved the scene, so it gets easier. It gets has less modifications in there. Right, and we have to do player and follow player. Player, character controller, actors manager. Oh, that was a mistake. Sorry. I did that directly in the scene. Revert that. Open. Done. Follow player. Let me guess, it's on the bots again. Follow player. It's on a light prefab. Okay. Follow player. All right. Not gonna question that. It's really weird. Fair. Done. Let's see. Yeah. No errors this time. Good. So that was the story of Actors Manager. What we did is we moved it to a scriptable object so that everyone who wants to talk to the manager can reference it directly. We removed all the find object of type calls to get it and link to it directly in the inspector. There's one more thing which I don't like, which is it has this other field here, player, which is a public getter, private setter, but then it has this public setter. So like, what's the point? Why do you do that? If you have a public setter, might as well set it public. So it's just public. Game object player. We don't have to make this a property. Properties have hidden implicit fields which can serialize, even if you don't want that. That can cause all kinds of trouble. Also, you know how player is a game object, but then you probably don't want any game object to assign to player. In fact, this guy only wants the transform in order to follow the player. At the minimum, I would say let's store this. So let's make this Play character controller. It's in a different namespace. Interesting. So they did split their project up into multiple packages using assembly definition files. Apparently, the player character controller is in gameplay, which does not have, which references game, but game does not reference gameplay. So this is supposed to be like core stuff, and this is supposed to be the gameplay scripting, and that's why we can't reference play character controller. I would probably, because I would probably still prefer to put something here which is more really about the player, not just a game object. So maybe just make an interface like iPlayer and have it has a transform property, and then player character controller can implement iPlayer, and then everything works. But it's not the end of the world for this to be a game object. So in the interest of time, let's just move on. That was only the actors manager. This looks better now. I guess I'll leave it at this for the first episode, I guess. And I suppose next time I'll look at the audio manager. I hope you found this interesting, learned maybe something. Let me know any comments you have. I usually hang out in the IGD Share Discord. Yeah, that's it. Bye.